Oh my god, that burns all the way down. I'm gonna show you how to make mead. Give me a second. Oh, that's alcohol-y. Hey y'all, it's Andrew Reed with Mossy Creek Mushrooms, and today, no, we're not drinking urine. Oh man, that burns all the way down. Instead, today we're gonna make mead. Specifically, we're gonna make something I call Forest Dwellers Mead. It is centered around as many products as possible from the forest. It is a mushroom mead. It is primarily used for cooking. I use it in everything from chilies to deglazing pans when I saute. It's pretty strong alcohol content. Like I said, it burns all the way down. So the first thing that you're gonna need is your mushrooms. And, you can use dried. These are slightly dried, they're not completely finished. You can use fresh. The first time I ever made this mead, I made it with shiitake mushrooms and oysters. Today we're going to be making it with King's, Blues, and King Blue oysters. And beyond that, I've got a couple secret ingredients. So what really gives this a good kick, the mushrooms give it that nice umami flavor, that nice savoriness or whatever. I've always hated the word umami, but you need garlic. Lots of garlic in this. This is not a drinking wine, like I said. This is more for cooking. And I'll tell you, because it tastes great in food, but when I glug this a little bit, Samantha won't come anywhere near me. So, you know, that's a problem. The second thing you're going to need is raisins. You can use raisins. This is really kind of for yeast nutrients. It gives it a little bit of tannin for the yeast to live off of. But I like using the cranberries because, for one thing, they give it a nice color, and for another thing, they're a bog plant, right? It goes along with that Mossy Creek mushrooms theme. And I just like the way cranberries taste so much more than raisins anyways. The next thing you're gonna need is your yeast. Now, this is champagne yeast, and this is what most people use when they're making mead. They want a high alcohol content. I will tell you that this is not my favorite yeast to use. My favorite is actually just Fleischmann's, whatever you call it, bread machine yeast. It's the instant yeast, the rapid rise variety. It's fast. I like the flavor so much more. It leaves your meat a little cloudy. A lot of people don't like that. They want that crystal clear stuff. When you're cooking, you want flavor. You don't want crystal clear mead. So this stuff is what I prefer. Now this recipe is for 1 gallon. I'm going to just give you the recipe that I've got coming out of my recipe journal. My recipe journal is just little things that I've tried out. And right there we have my Forest Dwellers Mead. My handwriting is atrocious, so that's why we make printed off labels instead of written labels for liquid cultures. This is something that I've made a few times now, and it is easily one of my favorite things ever to cook with. It packs a punch even whenever you've got nothing else to use in your spice cabinet. So the most important thing when making mead is your honey. You need honey. Now you can make this with the grocery store honey. I've done it plenty of times. It works great. Right now I've been buying my honey by the 5-gallon bucket from a guy out of North Carolina just over the mountains for me, so it's about as local as I can get in bulk. This is Wildflower Honey. It is very thick, it is very dark, it is very flavorful, and so this stuff is just what I consider the best thing in the world to use when it comes to a cooking mead. Just everything needs to pack a flavor and a punch. Okay. Alright, so first we get our water measured out. You want about 1 gallon. We can always top up with a little bit more if we need to. Tap water, I think, works great. You can use spring water, crystal clear Fiji water, I don't care. Any kind of water is good. If you can drink it, it's going to be good enough to brew with. Take that. Take our pot. And then we add the mushrooms to it. Just going to rip them up. I don't weigh these. I don't have a specific amount. So when it comes to a recipe, I do have measurements on spices and things, but when it comes to mushrooms, just, you know, break up a bunch. 3 good-sized clusters is plenty. I prefer to use dried. I feel like the flavor has been improved in the mushrooms. once they've been dried. You can even add the core with a little bit of substrate. I've done that plenty of times. I've just got so much mushroom material to work with that I'm not worried about getting every little bit in there. That is probably enough. And now we're just going to add the water and we'll simmer it to make a stock. Cool. And crank that heat up. Alright, so the next step for me is while my mushrooms are heating up and beginning to simmer, I'll let them simmer for, it'll be 20-30 minutes while they're simmering. I just want a really nice mushroom stock. So the longer you cook it, the more mushrooms you have in it, the stronger it's going to taste. As far as I'm concerned, you can't overcook the mushrooms. You can't add too many. So as long as you can get that gallon of water there. So while that's going, I'm going to take my bath, my big A funnel that I have here, and I'm going to set it up for my 1 gallon demijohn, fancy word for glass jug. And then I'm going to take my minced garlic and I'm going to get 1 tablespoon of this. I'm going to get as much garlic in a tablespoon as I can without making the biggest mess. And just dump it in. Now it's important to remember that before you do all this, you want to wash everything out with soap and water. You can do these sanitizing rinses that you can buy that are more expensive. I've never done that. I've never seen a need to, so long as I wash everything out, make sure it's really nice and clean, run it through the dishwasher so that it gets sterilized, or at least sanitized. Now the next ingredient is going to be your cranberries, your raisins, and my notebook just literally says 1 handful of raisins per gallon. So since we're doing 1 gallon, it'll be 1 big handful. So along with our mushrooms, our oysters, our shiitake, or any other kind of mushroom you're using to make this mead, I always take a nice chunk of chaga and I'll throw that in. If I have some turkey tail, I'll add that. I'll also add reishi. And I always do about what I consider 3 or 4 coffee servings worth. I don't have an exact number or anything on this, like anything else I do, it's all loosey-goosey. Just break that up. And add that to your pot. Someone asked to see my failures. So the next thing we add is our honey. Incredible just how much boiling mushroom smells good. Alright, now that our mushrooms have been simmering for about 30 or 40 minutes, it's time to take them, strain them, and get those that nice mushroomy broth into the demijohn. So, because I have lost my stainless steel strainer, I'm going to do this with the lid. Use a strainer, please. Don't do this at home. So, like I said, it's okay to allow that to cook down enough that you don't have your gallon anymore. I'm going to grab my jar of honey that I put hot water in so that it collected it. and I'm just gonna pour that in to top it off. All right, so we leave a little bit of headspace. That just means like before it starts to really angle up, I give it a bit of air. We'll grab the bung and the airlock and put it on here and then allow it to cool. And after it's cooled, we'll pitch the yeast. And I just do 1 tablespoon of Fleischmann's bread yeast into this after it's cooled down. And it takes about 6 weeks to brew. So let's mix this thing up, get it capped off, and let it cool. Alright, so the next thing to do is to stir this bad boy up. And my favorite thing to use is what's called a paddle bit. And this is common in brewing supplies. We'll put the link down below for you guys. This just goes on the end of a drill and makes stirring 5-gallon batches up really, really easy. I like to use it for 1-gallon batches. Be careful, it can be a bit overpowered for a 1-gallon batch. So, for the drill, I use Bosch. Bosch, it's not the best choice. It's Spacer's choice. You know, some of you may get that, some maybe not. Alright, so it goes on. Once it's tight, put it in. This particular bit has to squeeze a little bit into the hole. Bam. And then we just start slow. It will come flying up at you if you go too hard, too fast. So. Alright, once it's good and stirred, you just pull this bad boy back out, wash it off, and then you're done. So the next thing to do is to cap this bad boy off and let it cool till tomorrow when we'll pitch the yeast. Pitch the yeast just means add the yeast. So, Beavis and Butthead jokes are coming. This, on a demijohn, is a bung hole. This is a bung. This is an airlock. We'll have links to both of these in the description down below. This right here inserts into the bung, the hole in the bung hole bung, and then that whole assembly of the bung gets inserted into the bung hole. It will then sit. Now, while it's cooling, it will be drawing some air in, and you'll see it kind of reverse bubbling. After we pitch the yeast tomorrow, you'll start to see this thing vigorously bubbling. So anyways, it'll start to bubble. Once your bubbling slows down to where it's like less than 1 per second, 1 bubble per, or 1 per 5 seconds, or even anything like that, once it slows down to where you can barely notice any bubble action happening at all, primary fermentation is over, and you can then either cold crash it in the refrigerator, or you can let it sit longer and it'll get a higher alcohol content. I tend to forget about these. That's why brewing is one of my favorite hobbies, because when you're a mushroom farmer, you lose track of time, plus I'm lazy. I can set this, forget about it, and it only gets better the more I forget about it. So, usually you can bottle within about 6 weeks. Once you have it bottled up, I get these 750 milliliter wine bottles and then corks. We'll put those in the description down below as well. And you can sit there and cork them, set them on your shelf and forget about them, let them age, or you can use them right away. I personally like to use this stuff right away as a cooking wine. It doesn't really need to age to get the best flavor because it's already just such a powerful punch. Some people prefer to age their cooking wines. It's all personal preference. I highly recommend that you take what I've done here and just play with it. Just see what you come up with. In fact, tell me about it, because I am really interested in brewing, and it's one of my favorite hobbies. So any of you that share that hobby, please just let me know. Other than that, guys, I'll see you when I pitch the yeast tomorrow, I guess. After your mix is cooled, I take my Fleischmann's bread machine yeast, take half a teaspoon, pull the bung off, and then just simply pour that in. I have found that people mix this stuff in. I have found that I don't even have to mix it in. I just leave it alone and it starts reacting on its own. Usually within just a few minutes, maybe an hour, this will begin to bubble, and after that, primary fermentation is underway. Comes down to it in a few weeks. We'll try to get you guys a bottling and then a cooking video with this. Should be in about 6 to 8 weeks before this is even close to ready. I'm not going to promise the timeline. If you guys have any questions about how I do this, please just leave them in the comments below. We'll get to the questions as quickly as we possibly can so you guys can make your own versions of this. Please feel free to variate and create new ones of these and report back to me your successes and your failures. And yeah guys, you know, please hit that like button, subscribe, and as always y'all, keep spawning culture. Thank you for watching, and please make sure to check out our other videos.